marketing and growth came out of that was when I was starting to build a lot of websites, different apps, and different businesses, really just trying to build stuff and engineer things. I noticed that it didn't matter how good of a product and service I had if nobody knew about it.
This is Beyond Influential with Brittany Crystal. Join Brittany as she chats with today's thought leaders about the power of influence, how it's developed, and how they get us to consume both on and offline. Here's your host, Brittany Crystal.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Beyond Influential. I'm here today with Justin Wu, aka Hackapreneur on social media. He's an information architect turned growth hacker and is currently the founder of Growthly, a growth marketing agency based in LA. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thanks again for having me.
Of course. So I know you do so much more than that intro detailed at all. I was wondering if you could tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got started in growth.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I've been a kind of startup founder and entrepreneur at the age of 12, 27 now. And it really started out with me kind of wanting to build a lot of different websites and projects to sell literally board games, video games, Pokemon cards. That's how I first started out my entrepreneurship career. And really marketing and growth came out of that was when I was starting to build a lot of websites, different apps, and different businesses, really just trying to build stuff and engineer things. I noticed that it didn't matter how good of a product and service I had if nobody knew about it. Especially coming from a place like Seattle where it's very risk averse. There's not a lot of funding. I had to learn how to be very scrappy with my marketing and growth and really lean on the bootstrap mentality where I had to generate my own revenue. And in order to do that, I had to focus heavily on growth and get my products out there without hiring even a marketer. And that's when I really started getting heavily into the growth and marketing space and started to find out a little bit more that I can start combining kind of my background in tech as well as some software development into marketing and combine that all together. And that's where the term kind of growth hacking started popping out as a buzzword.
So to bring it back at that age of 12, what was driving you to sell those cards? Yeah. Was it money or was it just the game?
It was mostly the game, right? When I was growing up, I didn't have a job yet at that point, and I wanted to buy more things. And there's nothing was really given to me, and I was like, okay, well, I have to go out and get it myself. And what I saw early on was my dad specifically showed me eBay and Craigslist for the very first time at the early days there, and he told me that if I were to wait and be a smart shopper essentially on these sites, I can start looking at the price and get stuff at discount. Once I started taking note of the price differences between online and retail, then I started seeing the arbitrage opportunities where I'm like, wow, okay, well, I can wait, I can be patient, but I can really start seeing the gaps of 20-30% discount, but nobody else knew about it offline, right? And so that's when I knew there's something going on where I can utilize getting things discount online and kind of resell it offline a lot. And that's when I started making some profit. And once I started making more profit, then that's when I started really building a store around that. And I did a lot more stuff to kind of all push into that. I built a forum, a chat room, a community, and eventually built up a Craigslist-like website using a forum system.
Huh. Wow.
To let people trade. And so the idea behind that was really come a necessity of me wanting more things, more toys, games initially, and then ended up understanding that I was making profit and money, and then just reinvested that back into the business and kept scaling that.
So were people hearing about this more word of mouth in person, or was this mostly online community?
It started off in person, very ground level, at different stores, different events, little meetups and conferences. And then it started going a little bit bigger because then once I started creating that Craigslist-like site, where I knew that allows people to start talking to each other and trade, I knew that if I were bringing that type of audience, then I can sell something to them, right? And because they're already thinking about commerce or trading. And then another layer that I added that helped increase retention in an insane amount of levels is just add a full discussion board section where not only can you come here to trade, but you can also talk. So it was like essentially creating a two-sided marketplace at that point, where community, people coming in for the community, people coming in to trade. And this was like really early on when when there wasn't Facebook back then, right? And so I was able to really capitalize on that, and from there, that kind of brought me in a little bit rabbit hole when I started figuring out that I could actually put a Google ad on my website and make money on that. And I learned that I was like, wow, I'm making internet money from literally a digital banner.
Was that the first time you realized you could influence people's behavior?
Yeah, really. And that's really, and then once I started looking into it, then that's when I started connecting with these other internet marketers all around. And I said, hey, well, I'm not the only one alone anymore creating these websites. There's other people who are creating websites for different topics, industries, and niches. And so once I discovered that whole world, then it kind of pulled me out another box where I stopped thinking about that single industry of toy games and stuff. And I started trying to learn other industries that potentially had very high payouts in terms of the traffic. And so it can be things from the cars, automotive, real estate, loans. Like I literally just looked at what you could make as a marketer and advertiser, and then work my way back to kind of reverse engineer and find out what makes those customers tick. Because like if I can figure out the bridge between connecting a nice deal offer or ad to the audience and build a whole website or application to it, then there's a lot of monetization opportunities for there.
So were you a natural salesperson growing up, or is that not your natural instinct?
No, not at all. And it's not even about sales. I would say more so marketing, where I guess the biggest thing that I learned early on was, again, literally the word arbitrage and being able to just see differences and having an eye for differences of value in the market, different marketplaces, and kind of like taking advantage of that gap of value or value exchange or value differences, right? Let's say Amazon is obviously selling stuff cheaper, but before there wasn't Amazon, and there were deals that you can buy either through retail or you can go online, and nobody knew about that in person. So again, like I would buy stuff online and then just resell it offline to a lot of locals for just a little bit discount, but they wouldn't. They didn't see the difference in terms of feeling. They didn't. There was a whole arbitrage opportunity that happened and occurred from that.
What I think is so interesting about you and your approach is just it's very systematic, and you see things even just from the 2 seconds talking to you in terms of systems, and it's just so different from a lot of. I mean, I like to think I operate logically. And like, I must have some form of system, but a lot of what I know is more intuitive and like a gut instinct, where I think you look at the same thing and you're looking at data and doing some other kind of analysis that might not even be pure numbers, seeing something else.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I learned a lot of that much more later in terms of being much more structured in that sense, that what the big thing that I've learned is that everything, whether it be a marketplace, an app, a piece of paper, a book, there's only like three elements to it. You have value, whether that be information, some sort of tangible intrinsic value or service, whatever it is. There's some sort of value. On the other end is users or people or customers. And in between that is the technology or medium or transfer between the customer, person, and value. So it can be an app, it could be a piece of paper, which gives you value. It could be a screen, a tangible product, doesn't really matter. If you can kind of think of every element in that way, then it applies to everything. Literally, it doesn't matter. And so you're not caught up in what the technology is, as long as you understand it's just a bridge to get somebody some sort of value.
So you mentioned growth hacking. When I met Gary Vaynerchuk in 2014, after I'd already been working at his company for a few months, the first thing he told me when he sat down with me alone was to look into growth hacking and to come back with him in a month.
Yeah.
And, you can Google it, but what I understand growth hacking to be for me is attention arbitrage, at least in that world. What's your definition of growth hacking?
Yeah. So growth hacking has definitely turned into a big buzzword. A lot of people think growth hacking to be the quick magic win, silver bullets, or a really quick exploit to get 0 to 1 million users overnight. That usually doesn't happen. I had the chance to even interview Sean Ellis, who invented the word growth hacking. He had his definition that he came out with, and it really was about what happened with in the marketing world before growth hacking came. The term came to be was that there was marketers, developers, and data scientists, and they were not talking to each other. Business school taught marketers to just focus on the business side. Computer science taught people to focus on the code, and then data is just left to the data scientists or anybody that's crunching the numbers in database, right? And as technology kind of exploded and grew, there's a growing need to start making all those teams much more interconnected and agile, and that's where growth hacking came to be. It's intersection between business marketing side, understanding the data, and then the software and engineering side to marry all those together, which was a concept that wasn't there previously at all. Again, like everybody was sitting in their own silos and covering their own bases. To me, really what growth hacking is about is, in terms of the mentality and mindset, is it is marketing, except it's running a lot more experiments, a lot of experiments, seeing what works, what doesn't, and quickly responding based off that data, and then combining each channel and stacking that together to generate growth, whatever growth it is.
So test and learn fast, fail fast, and try something else.
Yeah, and you can compare it to like the lean startup. When lean startups, the lean startup model came out, it's not, it's still building a business. Same thing as like marketing is still, growth hacking is still marketing, except it was just a new way or different specific methodology to quickly experiment, test. And so you're not being so stuck on a single campaign or marketing. You're running 10 at the same time and seeing what works, and then pulling back what does, and then trying out brand new ones as well. So if anything, that's what has changed in terms of having a growth hacking mindset. Now, there are some, there's only actually like a few handful of people that I can actually say is an actual growth hacker out there. And again, like a growth hacker is either good at like a specific channel or exploit. Let's say somebody's good at LinkedIn, then they can be a LinkedIn growth hacker, a Quora growth hacker, YouTube growth hacker. I've not seen it in many cases where somebody's really like growth hacking all over all the different channels, unless they have that technical background, which goes back to the point where I think marketers should be a little bit more technical and should understand a little bit of software development because of the way how growth hacking works and how marketing is evolving these days to become more data-driven and software-driven.
So you mentioned entrepreneurship at 12, but I'm guessing at 12, entrepreneurship wasn't a thing that you just go do usually. I think you went to college, right? Did you go to UW?
Yeah, I went to UW, University of Washington, and it was every time, even from like middle school, high school, and even during my college years, I still was in parallel to, while attending schools, building different apps and businesses. And then I ended up not finishing on my junior year at UW, but I still valued everything that I've learned through the university, and that's when I studied information architecture. And but my biggest thing was my startup at that time was taking off, and it was a kind of opportunity cost where I was paying money and losing money, or I could just stop what I'm doing and go out and run my own business. And so yeah, I found a kind of comfortable point to kind of jump off and get into that point. But I've always been trying to build apps throughout the past few years, and just never made that leap to go full-time entrepreneurship, just because of, especially back then, entrepreneurship wasn't really,
yep. It wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing, and it wasn't even supported at all.
Yeah.
Maybe like startups was, but startups was really, really like Silicon Valley, especially in Seattle. Even to this day, still entrepreneurship is not really a thing.
So what is an information architect?
It's not a wide degree that is offered by, there's only like a handful of schools that offer it. It's called the Information School. The very old name where information architecture came from was library science. Obviously libraries has evolved, but information architecture now, when it evolved into to what it is today, is we study, take computer science classes. We study cognitive science, sociology, psychology, UI, UX, data structures, and project management.
So that's kind of like the perfect marketer in a bundle.
Exactly. And I was going to say that exactly. It's 100% because what it was is that it's very similar to what growth hacking is, because developers are handling the back end. Consumers or users or think they're right too on their side, and then on the business side, they also think they're right. As an information architect, you have to study all three sectors so that you can be essentially the middleman translator between three departments to then architect the whole exact information system or app or website that you're trying to build with all three pieces in mind. And so that's where that degree kind of helped me evolve into get and really accelerate into my approach as a marketer instead of coming it from a standard marketing like business school background.
That's awesome. What event started the process of you leaving college?
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of, what made me left UW was building a agency specifically for a marketing agency for the automotive and real estate industry. And and the idea was to quickly evolve into a full tech startup, utilizing an agency to bootstrap cash. Again, there was no funding involved, especially coming from Seattle. And so I had to focus first on thinking about how do I grow a startup from the ground up without funding again. And that's building an agency first, service 40 car dealerships in Washington State, then top 5 brokerages in Washington State as well. And then I was just doing a lot of lead gen and marketing for used cars, new cars, as well as homes and rentals. And then I was trying to take all that cash and then reinvest that into actually building the technology, software, and an actual like SaaS platform that I can sell to be used by the car industry and real estate industry. I learned a lot, and that obviously did not happen. Otherwise, it would be I'd have a little bit different story than what I had previously. I've learned a lot that it was too early for the car industry to adopt. Most of them are still to this day are not very tech savvy and tech heavy. Maybe the big dealerships are, but the small mom and pop car dealerships, the shady car dealerships, I call them the sharks. It was a very interesting client to have. They're not easy to deal with, and they're very. It's similar to like the tech wave. Everybody kind of who wasn't tech savvy still skipped computers, and they just went to mobile. And that's what happened. Where everybody wanted to build mobile. Mobile is still too early at that time when I dropped out. And so mobile was starting to become a thing, and I didn't evolve to build a mobile app first, because mobile app first wasn't even the concept. People weren't thinking about mobile app first, especially back then, since smartphones weren't there.
So then what happened with the real estate stuff too? So you obviously found these clients. What exactly was growth hacking for them at this time? Where are we at the time?
It wasn't really, there was some growth hacking being involved where I was doing a lot of scraping on platforms like Airbnb for cars as well as for real estate listings, but I was also automating a lot of the lead generation on platforms like Craigslist and very similar like car listing platforms too. And so for me, I was taking home inventories and car inventories, and it's pretty much syndicating and distributing it out, and then generating all that traffic for them at scale. Again, it's a very manual process. Normally, if you wanted to list all your cars out on all these platforms, you have to go to each site, upload them manually and constantly update them. So I was building a system that was updating the prices, updating the pushes, and if a car sold, we pulled them off as well. So I was heavily focused on lead gen, if anything. And the growth hacking part there was me doing everything by hand first, and then start bringing in software to automate the tasks that I was doing to essentially push data, exporting it out to the different marketplaces. And that was for both real estate and for cars. And what ended up happening was Airbnb was also, like, actual Airbnb was doing the same thing I was doing, except at a 100x larger scale. And they were taking all ads and scraping Craigslist too, and then bombarding Craigslist with ads, their own ads too.
That's actually the first growth hack I've ever heard about. When people reference like the beginning of growth hacking, it's always the Airbnb Craigslist example.
Well, I was doing this, and I was doing the same thing, except I didn't have a full team at what they did, and I was literally posting a lot of ads a day too on Craigslist, because Craigslist still to this day is a very, very strong platform for local commerce and local lead gen, and so it was a very, very big platform, and one of the most secure platforms, I should say.
So was the goal for you to have an agency? Was that the dream at that time?
Yeah, I mean, and this is always funny too. Whenever you always talk to somebody's startup and you tell them you're doing an agency, they'll always talk down to you. They're like, you're building a lifestyle business. You're not building real equity value. You're not building that. And so I was always getting that flack from all my friends in the Valley. They're always telling me like, oh, hey, look, I raised $1 million or $2 million to build this social app startup. I'm like, okay, well, I can't move to the Bay Area right now. And I just see all my friends getting funding. I'm like, all right, well, still, I don't care what they say. I'm just going to focus on bootstrap, building an agency, and then go from there. Fast forward a little bit, as a year or two, my friend's companies died. I was still making revenue at that point. But then I really wanted to shift out of it because, I mean, there is truth in the sense that running an agency is just pure revenue, and it's not building a big multiplier or big long-term value. And so at that moment, I was comfortable with the money that I had in the bank and where I was at a standard, but I wanted to actually start building another like big SaaS product or a big marketing tech product. And so that's when I had an opportunity to come down to LA about 3.5 years ago, and got invested by Warner Brothers, went through the Warner Brothers Accelerator with one of the products that I pitched to them, which was essentially creating video e-commerce. So you could watch videos and essentially click and purchase products. And we're building a tech around that space. And so, yeah, they accepted us. And then that's when we went through essentially Warner Brothers School and learned about Hollywood and all the intricacies of it. And also learned about how terrible it is.
I worked in Hollywood too. And I gotta stop you for a second, because before this, I was looking on your LinkedIn page, and something that I think is amazing that you do with each of your roles, you put learnings, and I actually copied and pasted it because I thought it was amazing. I was like, I actually wanted to bring it up. It says Hollywood is cool on paper, complicated industry to deal with.
Yeah.
Too much politics and legal. And I was like, yes, all of it. All of the things you're saying are accurate.
Yeah, it was cool that we had Warner Bros. As a client. It was not cool dealing with each of the departments that function really different, and they had no tech team, and they don't have an in-house tech, and there's legal stuff, and they're doing net 90+ pay. It was not glorious at all. It was not as glorious as I thought it would be. And there are companies that have made it through all that, and it's great because they're a vendor for life. But the obstacles there, the barrier to entry, is just insane, and I wouldn't really wish upon it for anybody to go through that process. But it was a learning process, jumping straight into that. So quickly after that, company died. At that point, that's when I started pulling all my experiences to start building a real like marketing SaaS product, and that's when I created Vitamin immediately afterwards, and that became a kind of an all-in-one marketing tool and marketing SaaS product that marketers can quickly deploy an email campaign, landing page, email conversion optimization capture. We were trying to build something a little bit too ambitious especially for how much revenue and funding that we had, and there was definitely blunders on that front too. But But on the growth side, I was still able to get that company to about a million in ARR in the first year, and really punch growth. But there's definitely stuff that happened more in the back end side of things that kind of made it implode. Just typical startup high growth at all costs, in an environment that became essentially what they called a nuclear winter for investors, where there was a period of no IPOs, no down rounds, no series funding. And so literally we were on a trajectory for high growth, burning so much cash, and then just it literally imploded from the inside when we're not able to get the funding that we need. And so that was my learnings on that front. I learned how to run growth for a SaaS company. So then now, again, like the different elements and different businesses that I've done, whether it be agency, I've learned how to build an agency from the ground up and service all the clients. I've learned how to build more like a marketing tech tool in terms of video space. So I learned about video e-commerce, and then I did something in the marketing SaaS side and built a SaaS company and grew that to $1 million in ARR. And so now that helped me become even more qualified to help and run growth for SaaS companies, agencies, etc. Because I've done it before and actually ran the growth to generate my own leads. And so that's when Vitamin died, that's when I just like took a pause of everything and just said, hey, let's just lean on what I'm the best at, and that is generating growth and still understanding it from a technical standpoint and a product standpoint on how to combine that all together. And that's when I really founded Growthly from the ground up.
So you have any partners in this, or did you have,
no.
Assuming you had previously partners?
Not Growthly, no. I was at a point where what happened with Vitamin and what happened with a few of my other projects before, there definitely was obstacles in terms of co-founders. They were just not seeing eye to eye, and it was just there was just too much, to me it was, running a startup is definitely complicated because a co-founder could be good for even like the first year or 6 months, and then things shift and different change and you go different directions, and there's always a lot of factors to that. So when running Growthly, I decided to just be a full single founder, build it up from the ground up by myself and take it from there. And so far it's been great.
So I definitely think that's something people don't talk about enough, is the co-founder thing. Like starting a company with someone, I mean, everything's a relationship. Your clients are a relationship. You have your personal relationships, the co-founder relationship. You really need to be locked in on the same end goal and be growing as people at the same time and really have it locked down, because at the upfront, it seems super probably exciting and you probably like this person, or even if they're balancing you out, it doesn't mean that it's even going to last 2 years.
Yeah, and things change over time too. And there's even points too that a lot of people don't talk about, is there's a cap where sometimes a co-founder hit their limit in terms of skill sets too, and then that's like another thing that you might have to solve internally. It's like, they initially were the CTO, but then when you go to their Series A beyond round, they definitely should not be the CTO. That's when you start bringing somebody that is better to fulfill that role, and then that's definitely like not easy to manage and move. And that's not really highlighted a lot. I think the best book that highlights that is a book called The Hard Things About Hard Things, and it literally talks about each phase of a startup, because literally every phase of a startup, it's these different issues. Like I said, the first hard issue about founding a startup and growing it is building the initial team, and then building the MVP, and then getting initial traction. Once you go hit them beyond that next stage, it's about scaling. And to scale, you have to build the teams. You have to shift people too, because somebody who helps you start might not help, is really good to scale. And you have to know when to fire them, when to let go, or shift roles, or help them elevate them to evolve into that role. So it's just like, those are things that I've learned from building all these different startups too internally, from thinking about it on a more like on the management side, but also from the growth side too. You have to shift internally your team resources as well as the company structure, while trying to grow too at the same time too. And that mindset really started to help me think about product launches and Kickstarter launches and now cryptocurrency launches much more effectively, because it's the same exact process where each phase from pre-launch to actual launch and the post-launch are very much the same. It's literally, think about like a rocket. You have the boosters; those boosters drop off, then you switch off to the main rocket engine, and then you let that go for the and continue on. And so that's like pretty much the same exact thing with whenever you're launching a company. You have to let go of certain mechanics or things that are happening inside your business and shift if you want to go further.
So how many people work for you right now?
4. It's been a distributed team. So the way that my team structure works now is that I'm coming in and essentially running the head of the project, and then I have somebody dedicated to paid acquisition, somebody dedicated to SEO, somebody is just more like a content marketer, content/copywriter, and then the 4th is just more like a generalist marketer that can build inbound marketing funnels as well.
So you don't create content at all?
No, not in-house. We will enhance and work with an existing team with the internal product or client to develop the content, or we'll work with a production or PR agency externally to come in and create the content. But creating content myself, there's always lean ways to just create content on the fly. It's just kind of training people to learn how to create content initially. And everybody's awkward when they first create content, but having a certain eye of creating content as well.
So you mentioned Kickstarters, and we're going to talk about crypto, but you've raised a lot of money for Kickstarters before. What are the keys to raising money successfully for a Kickstarter?
Yeah, again, it's thinking about the 3 different stages: pre-sale, pre-list build-up, to actual launch, to post-launch. Each component is very, very critical. A lot of people just jump straight to launch without building a pre-launch list. That makes no sense at all, because there's a lot of factors to launching a Kickstarter. One, it's just the overall ranking system. So it's similar to like Amazon Store, Google, or the App Store. If you just deployed your app there without pushing a lot of installs and nobody knows about it, you're not going to increase up the ranks. You're not going to be seen organically, and you're starting from the really bottom, and you're going to have to climb your way up. If you start off strong on day one you launched, and you have a lot of buyers, you have a lot of people coming into your app and installs, whatever, then you're showing signals of virality, and from there you shoot up more in the ranks, and that starts kind of exponentially just like giving you rocket ship growth, because now you're sucking in all the attention while you're climbing the charts, and as long as your product service is good enough to handle that, then you should be able to retain all that. And so that's really what it is. It's thinking about the different phases, and also focusing on storytelling and building up the brand. Because when you think about a Kickstarter launch or any personal brand or any type of story that you want to go out there, whenever somebody thinks of a Kickstarter these days now, they're thinking of potentially scam, or they're actually going to get the product, or can they even build the product? Just because you hear all these horror stories, right? And you have to be able to get through all those objections and be able to not directly tell people to buy your stuff, but to story tell them by telling them about the founding team, the product, the actual features, different use cases as well, and hit them with different angles, really, that will get people sold into your story and what you're trying to sell to them. It's not trying to be very transactional where you're trying to sell people up front. And it's really, again, I don't mean to be like just, it's the jab, right hook mentality. And that really changed my whole mindset, which I wasn't really thinking about before. Again, coming from more like a technical or like a data driven, like more like a ad buyer background initially, switching to more brand and content marketing. Once I learned more about the jab, right hook mentality, and that switched the whole mentality when I go out and launching products. Before I was just literally buying ads and trying to get people to buy. And that's very single transactional. And it's like, if they don't buy, they don't buy. And that's like, it doesn't really help build that momentum up for any type of launch. And so that's the only real difference between the way I've been able to look at the marketing and growth, where a lot of other growth marketers are, again, they're just buying the ads or buying these single growth hacks to just dump a lot of traffic in, or getting the top rank on Reddit. They're not really building up that sustain and inbound marketing funnel to push people to the sale and building that momentum.
It's kind of hard to get away from the Gary on this podcast because I worked for him for long enough on his personal brand, but it's all true and it works. And that's why he's so successful at what he does. I mean, for anyone who's listening to this podcast who doesn't know who Gary is for whatever reason, because if you know me, you probably know that I work for Gary. Jab, 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 right hook is the idea of giving value, and then going in for the ask. Like that's just
it really changed. It really changed everything that I did on the marketing, and I didn't read that until a year and a half or 2 years ago, actually. And again, like I didn't understand social marketing that much. I didn't understand content marketing. I didn't understand personal brand about 2 years ago. And the moment that I started really listen to that, that's when I started adding the other half that I was missing, which was, again, like I was going for right hooks every single time. And once I reversed that, we're essentially building a whole branding machine behind that is going to actually be sustainable and last forever.
So that leads me to my next question. When did you first start putting content online and kind of building up your own personal equity?
Yeah, so it was about a year and a half ago, and it started out with starting to see, I've always wanted to build a personal brand for the past, 5+ years or more. And I was sitting behind the sidelines and I would see all these other marketers building up their own personal brands, right? And I see a lot of hype with the personal brands, and I got really frustrated one day, and I became a real hater for these other internet marketers that I felt were either spreading not necessarily misinformation, but very elementary marketing stuff, and but everybody was still seeing them in the light of them being really good at marketing. But I knew that it was really simple stuff. But instead of me trying to downplay that, the only way is like, well, I can't do anything unless I go out there and show people myself on what real good marketing tips and marketing tactics look like instead. And so that's when I really started to take a look at really building my personal brand. And I first jumped straight into Snapchat very intentionally, and that's how I jumped into building my personal brand. What ended up happening was DJ Khaled obviously brought everybody a mass influx of people to come in, and then after that it was Gary, Grant Cardone, Ty Lopez, all these other marketers started hyping that up to get on board. And then what I started noticing though was that most of these business people, even Gary, was putting snaps on snaps, but he wasn't dropping the full Gary V show on directly natively on Snapchat. And that opportunity, that's when I knew that I needed to bring that level natively inside of the Snapchat platform. And so I did that. And then I started essentially sucking all the attention away from all these other entrepreneurs that were looking for content to consume natively on Snapchat, because they were on Snapchat all day long, right? Like most people on Snapchat were saying, oh, hey, look, I'm at this conference, and then go take a look at my blog link, swipe up, or not even swipe up, just go look at the links. I was dropping 10 to 15 minutes worth of video content on Snapchat a day. And that's actually very, very long. And I was doing that every single day for about a year. And the reason why I didn't run out of ammo is because I've done a lot of the marketing things for the past, 15 years.
You actually knew what you were talking about.
To go through. And I was also literally just documenting and sharing the insights of what I was doing too. So it was not me fabricating, not me even preparing and getting things up. So then that's when I started really going heavy on Snapchat, and then started getting picked up by Huffington Post, Inc., Entrepreneur, and then the Wall Street Journal reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to do a takeover and collaborate with them on their channel. And then that's became the huge catalyst, and that led to like Samsung, Intel, CES, and more. After going all in on Snapchat, which I'm not on Snapchat anymore.
I was going to ask you if you still put in the effort there.
No, and it's just me not being romantic about it and shifting where the whole market is shifted, right? A lot of everybody shifted to Instagram immediately, just because, again, discoverability was there, a lot more tension was there, and Snapchat I just saw my numbers just drop. All the effort that I put in, it was extremely hard to build up uh, thousands of views on my snaps from the ground up. And that's when I knew that I had to shift to Instagram. But then that didn't last long because I shifted immediately from Instagram to LinkedIn. And so like I'm all in on LinkedIn now. And if for those that don't know, LinkedIn used to be the very sales, recruiting, and boring platform. But they did big changes within the past 2 or 3 months that changed the full algorithm to be not to essentially copy Facebook. So everything is the news feed is not time sense chronological anymore. It's based on popularity, and that allows for content marketing to go viral now on LinkedIn. And that's when I decided to go all in on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely having a renaissance right now, and it's because they've shifted their algorithm. They're caring about video views. They're actually catering to the people on their platform now. And I was actually going to ask you about building out your LinkedIn. For your LinkedIn content, do you post like kind of everyday content, or is it strictly related to your business?
Both. I vary it up, and I need to keep pushing like content every day consistently. There's been definitely gaps. Obviously, if I'm a little bit busy, I won't write as much, but I'm trying to at least put one post out a day, just so I can keep growing kind of my follower numbers and also kind of increasing my chance to go viral essentially on LinkedIn. And so it's a combination, because the thing about LinkedIn is that if you talk about yourself only, the response isn't as strong, obviously, and nobody really wants to hear it unless it's a insightful piece of news that is relevant to the industry. Then people will like it, and then it's more kind of like a mixed humble brag, if anything. And you see a lot of that. A lot of people will share some sort of emotional story, and then how they overcame it, and how they and just literally say how good they are at the very end. and you see that a lot happening now in terms of like a lot of people's writings. A lot of people are sharing very emotional and personal stories. Those tend to go very viral. And that's something that I need to add into kind of my content marketing mix. My content, when I share anything on LinkedIn, has been a little bit more technical, like how-tos, tactical, where I'm telling people how to run personal brand growth, like systematically, and all the different tools that I find, and going from there. But the algorithm is not favoring that as heavily as a few other stories out there. So I used to be sharing that every single day. Now I'm sharing that in a mix between kind of documentation and storytelling.
So what tools and tactics are successful right now on LinkedIn?
Pure text posts is still number one. If you add an image, it will derank it a little bit in terms of virality. I don't know. That's just like how their algorithm works. Instagram images can still go viral, but not as viral. There's probably about a 20% difference in terms of like views or more. Every time I did a text post, for example, one of my posts got like 120,000 views without me even trying. And then when I add an image to an image post, it takes a while to get. It doesn't even get anywhere close to 100,000 views unless it goes super viral. But that usually is not the case. For the same amount of likes and comments that I have on both pieces of content, there's definitely big differences in terms of how much reach it hits outside the second and third degree networks as well. And then videos are just underneath that as well. And then last rank would be links. Don't put a link in at all.
I was just going to ask, so is it kind of like Facebook where you should put the link in the comments? Or
yeah, put the link in the comment.
How do you?
For sure.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that. I figured you might be penalized, but I wasn't sure if they really...
Yeah, heavily. Like you put a link, that post is not going to go anywhere.
Well, I'm going to stop doing that now.
Yeah. And that's through a lot of experimentation and talking with a lot of other kind of LinkedIn content creators.
So how much time do you spend then creating content versus distributing?
So when I create content, it usually is in batches, and it's pretty quick. And the way that I've been able to do that is I'll sit down on like a Sunday and I'll think of ideas, at least concepts of like headlines, and not necessarily headlines, just the big like overall prompt for that post. So if I want to talk about B2B sales or cold email lead gen or LinkedIn marketing or LinkedIn video, I'll just write those topics down. And then from there, that's when I just start quickly like kind of like brain dumping. Once I have those topics, I'll brain dump what I want to say in that Evernote, essentially. I use Evernote to store all the content I want to build. So essentially, I am kind of like pre-writing that piece of content. But if it's not ready yet, then I won't post it. Then I'll post something like in between this post, or I'll take another post that's more ready and just post that out. So I'm always having a content pool ready on deck that I'm constantly working on at my spare time. And then it's a mix between, I'd say about like 60% original content, 20% repurposed content. So 20% would be looking at top other influencers or publications and taking their topics and playing off that and adding my insight layer on top of that. So let's say like Snapchat laid off a lot of people, then I'll take that article or image and then post that out and then say my thoughts about Snapchat. So it's a little bit more, it's like a repurposed but unique insight spin on that too. And that I always have in my back pocket by just reacting to what's going on daily. And if the moment I see something that happened that day and I know I can like rant or go off on about it, then I'll quickly write about it and just post it. Then I'll postpone that post I needed that day to tomorrow, so that I don't have to worry about what's tomorrow. Again, like that's been my method in terms of pumping out content.
So do you post primarily on LinkedIn and then distribute it to, let's say, Instagram or Facebook? You're not making completely new content for those platforms?
No, I don't. If anything, I'll just create, if it's like Instagram, I'll create an image or find an image for it. If it's a video, then I'll make sure it's a 1-minute video that can work for Instagram as well. And then if it's more of a LinkedIn post, it's just going to be pure text. Pure text too. So it's taking a piece of content and then just making it fit for each of the social platforms.
So how has the personal brand goal changed? Before, were you trying to bring in business for your company? Are you enjoying now using speaking?
Yeah, it's always been a long-term goal, right? Again, with understanding personal brands not being a directly monetized, like it's something that you should not try to like get a quick instant buck for. Like it's building up that brand from the ground up and not expecting any money up front back, right? I spent a whole year on Snapchat, not because I was getting paid to do so, not because I was getting clients per se. It was more so to just increase that brand recognition and get myself to start speaking at smaller events, to get featured at these different publications. And I was comfortable with not making any money off of that because I was still making money off on the agency side and growth. And so as long as, I was comfortable with that, then I was able to really build my brand in a way where I don't have to sell anything at all. And all of my goal is to create content that can be shared and grow my numbers all across the board so that I am gathering more and more attention so that when I do come across something that I do want to sell in the future, I can do so. And so in the past year and a half or so now, it has shifted a little bit where I am starting to not necessarily sell things directly, but I am promoting a little bit more of my work and getting clients that way. It has also opened the doors to more speaking engagements that at bigger locations, even collaborating with a lot of other cool influencers too. So there's a lot of benefits from me building a personal brand that is not, like a direct transaction.
So as far as other influencers, whose content like resonates with you?
Yeah, so the way that I've always looked at content is been different between each industry and thing that I want to learn at. So if I want to learn about chatbots, I have a whole set of chatbot influencers that I look up to, from people like a guy named Scott Oldford, Seth Louis. So whenever I do want to go consume content, I go to those channels directly to learn more about that space. So it's much more like direct way, like, oh, I want to learn about VR this day, and then I'll go direct to VR. I stopped consuming a lot of more general personal brand content, just because like I am focused more so heavily on work, and then all my spare time is dedicated on me creating content, more so than actually consuming. But I'm quickly going back to the point where I am making a list of other people, like a guy named Manu or Swish, people like that, where I'm engaging with their content so that I'm maintaining that relationship with other influencers too. Because I think it's very one-way street to just create content and not collaborate with other content creators out there. And that's the fastest way to grow. And if you're not doing that, then it's definitely a big missing piece. You're fighting a battle yourself, especially on a personal brand.
Yes, I first heard of you through other influencer content and from some of the Facebook groups that we're in. How useful have those been for you, and what have you learned from putting on kind of events like the Stacking Growth event?
Yeah, so it's been a mix. So I've been on small podcasts to medium-sized podcasts, and just keep growing up from there. I've done different live stream shows, which is like X amount of viewers, whatever. If I do have that spare time slot, I will take it still to talk, because the idea is that I want to just, if it's in my spare time, and I can make a strong impression to those people, then I'm adding them into my overall stack of followers, right? And it allows me to jump through different groups. Like I jumped through a digital nomad group. I've never talked to that whole sector of people before. Now I'm getting a sector of those. I was at a cryptocurrency meetup yesterday. All those 100 people were now engaged with me, just because like I was speaking there. And so I don't mind essentially stacking all these chips together to generate my overall growth. And that's what I've been doing across all channels, tweet chats to live streams to whatever. If I can get my name out there and showcase and get kind of that omnipresence feel, then I don't mind. I will, as my growth of my personal brand shifts and it evolves, I will start elevating it, especially in 2018, by going after the even bigger conferences now, and then start pushing out very highly produced HD videos as well, to really take a personal brand that's more like a hobby to the next level of much more, again, like, Gary V-esque style, not 100%, but it's the same exact seriousness that he started off with, just doing the vlogs, right? And then shifted to doing the fully produced D-Rock style heavy influenced videos when he was handling that. It really helped elevate the brand, and that's like something that a lot of personal brands haven't done yet. Only a select few has pushed through that fold of really elevating personal brand by clocking up the production in unison with just the normal standard social content that you see it day to day.
So I think that's interesting that you bring that up, because would you have people helping you? Because now working for Gary, I moved out to New York to work for him when he was going to start taking the personal brand really seriously and, really push that Ask Gary Vee book and kind of take it to that next level. Now, at that time, when I joined, maybe there were 6 total people on the team. Now he probably has at least 20 people. I was working on the personal branding arm of the agency, Vayner Talent, and that, even to take your brand to the next level, requires people at that amount. Like
it does.
It's not even just yourself anymore at that point.
Yeah, and so that's where I'm going to have to slowly kind of scale in that point where I'm going to just start vlogging daily by myself with point and shoot, and then I'll outsource the video editing and cuts to somebody else to just cut it and make a nice intro and outro for me, and then. When the next stepping stone after that would be whenever we're going out to conferences or big events or an eventful a conference or a talk or anything like that, or a meeting even, then that's when I'll bring in a videographer to create a highlight of that. So it's like stepping stones. So I'm starting out very casual, where I'm doing the daily vlogs to just get momentum out there. Then highlight pieces, if I'm hosting a summit or conference, Stacking Growth, or I'm speaking at New York or San Diego, whatever, then I'll bring in a videographer to come and shoot that highlight piece for me, just so I have that in the portfolio. and then eventually get to the point where I'm eventually going to, have more higher production daily. But that's like eventual steps. And I don't necessarily have to get to that very last stage anytime soon, per se, but that's like the way that I'm going to kind of like approach personal brand. And what needs to happen is I obviously can't get a full 20-person team. But I think that with all the tactical knowledge that I can share, I will probably start monetizing it, my content in that way, where I'm selling more like a education school or online school for the content that I can produce and bring in. And that will help fuel and self-fuel my personal brand and take it and elevate it to the next level.
So what's the top question you get asked about growth? When somebody's like, okay, what can I do to grow? What do you tell them?
Most people, they don't even ask. They just tell me to grow. They're like, they like, can you help grow? Because the thing in reality is most people don't understand growth is a big magic block, black box for most. But when it comes to growth, though, people keep asking, what is the secret sauce to it all? Is it about running an exploit on Twitter or a single channel? And it's not about that. The biggest secret, not even a secret, the biggest thing that I've always started off and lean on is always focusing first on the inbound marketing funnel, period. And that is looking at the product, looking at the analytics, the attribution, and the whole customer journey flow. If you have multiple customers or demographics that you're trying to work with, then you have to map out each of those flows, right? And once you focus on that and you figure that out and it has a predictable flow, then that's when you go out and start testing out the distribution channels, whether it be Facebook ads, emails, influencer marketing, whatever. Those are all temporary. They come and go. I mean, like Snapchat can be good for a little bit, then it disappears. Again, we're not it's not focusing on the platform itself, but figuring out at the inbound first, and then figuring out how these external channels can drive traffic into that funnel. Because I've seen it so many times, whether it be like a brand focus so much on ads and acquisition and influencer marketing, and then the product and service sucks or doesn't have a good catch-all, then it's kind of pointless, right? And you just have to get that funnel straightened out.
So here's a question that I ask everyone who comes on to this podcast. What do you think that the secret to influence is, and what makes someone influential?
It's been difference because I think influencers, there's especially these days now.
It's so buzzy now. It's
so fuzzy, and there's so many different categorizations of it, right? You have the big influencers, Kim Kardashians and the Kanye's and all that stuff, and then you have more like the mid-tier ones who are just about to break through up to that stage, that might have like 100,000, 1 million followers, and then you have the micro influencers that might have a little bit lesser. I think that everybody has a different piece to the puzzle, because for me, again, like if I am going to learn about VR or chatbots, I'm going to go to that specific influencer. Do they have 1 million followers? No, but are they a thought leader or forward-thinking person, at least in that space, in the forefront of that space? Then to me, they are influential in what they do, because they're paving the way. And it depends if you're going for more like a consumer product, then obviously influence is basically mass attention in a sense. And if you're going for something a little bit more like B2B and more business focused, then it's just like, do they actually have the street cred and actual experience and skill sets to back up whatever they're saying, even if they don't have a lot of followers?
I think that's what it is. It's that, I mean, people throw around the word authenticity, but it's the authenticity plus the backup. It's like that proof that you can trust what they're saying.
Although there's definitely people who are not authentic and still get away with being.
No, that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, definitely another topic.
That's a super fun topic, though. Okay, so I need to talk to you about cryptocurrency. I want to know about cryptocurrency, blockchain, what these even mean, why they matter, why you're focusing on them now. It's definitely something that selfishly I just want to know about, and I know it's going to be big, but I know nothing.
What I always tell everybody is it is definitely a very big topic. I'm learning every single day. And if you really want to get into your jump straight and understand what's going on, I would definitely go to like YouTube and Google or search blockchain illustrations. And there's a lot of videos, TED Talks out there, and I would watch multiple because everybody has their own different views or angles or ways to explain it out. But essentially, what blockchain is to me, I got in about 2013, 2014. I've entered and exited the market as an investor multiple times. But I'm really excited about the technology of the blockchain itself, where right now, back then, like, there's just not a lot, especially what's happening today, there's not a lot of transparency, and a lot of people hate that. And people also hate the fact that money is being printed out of nowhere, out of thin air with nothing backing it, right? And also, too, there's just a lot of other inefficient systems, not even just money, of just sort of like data storage, data breaches. You obviously have the Equifax breach. That could have been avoided with the blockchain. And what blockchain allows us to do is create a transparent ledger of information value and exchange. And there's never been a time now where essentially value is essentially the internet of money or internet of value now, where it's similar to what like Napster or the torrents did back then, where everybody was sharing and seeing files together. Except now, if I send you a specific piece of data or image or money, you are the only owner of that. You're not making a copy of that image at all. So it's like a fully transparent way for us to kind of exchange value and say that you own it, to have ownership of that piece of value. And what is kind of amazing about it is it's just that there's a huge transparent layer to it where everybody can see what's going on, and everybody knows how many Bitcoins there are in existence. You can't really invent that up. The value of the Bitcoin definitely is a little bit hyped and arbitrary in terms of whatever the market says it is. But I believe that there's only up for where we're at right now in terms of like the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. The reason why I got into it, it's very much similar to, again, where I see value being exchanged in terms of like a system. Again, it's just like there's been so many systems out there where I always wanted to go out and like transfer money out to like Asia, or transfer money out to do some sort of transaction. I had to go through a middleman, whether it be Western Union or PayPal. Mm-hmm. And both of those have their huge obstacles between like delays, times, even with some middle parties just greedily taking that. With something like Ethereum, which is this number 2 coin, they invented something called the smart contract, where they can create these contracts digitally through the blockchain network, where there is no kind of like doesn't require anybody to get involved within your contract, and you can still execute that exchange between two people. And so, that hasn't happened before in a time where you can kind of bypass like a PayPal and still send somebody money with no fees across the world digitally in one click. And it allows them to kind of like store that value. Everybody's approaching like blockchain and cryptocurrency in a whole different angle, though, to be honest. Some people love the technology. Some people are seeing it as a store of value in the case of that their economy is not doing very well. And so that's where they're buying more Bitcoin or mining more Bitcoins to kind of escape from that, from whatever they're dealing with. So, it's a big topic, and there's so many different angles to it. And what I'm getting involved with now is working with a company called CoinCircle, and what they do is they tokenize, essentially taking established companies and building a blockchain and tokenization layer on top of whatever their business is. So let's say somebody wants to build a esports gambling token. I've been able to come in and help essentially grow and help these tokens get out to the market, essentially, because with any type of cryptocurrency, somebody has to set a value to it, and the market has to agree on it. And so we have to get these coins off the ground and get investors to come in to kind of invest, or if you're selling an actual token, you're actually just coming in to buy, not invest, buy these tokens. So my role is it's been getting involved with these token projects, very similar to what I've been doing on the Kickstarter launches, except it's the same thing. Now I'm trying to get these tokens launched, essentially.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic, and I'm still learning about it, different aspects of it every day. But overall, I'm very bullish in terms of like where everything is trending, just because from what I know on the back end, there's going to be bigger companies entering the space like Toyota, IBM, Zynga, and a few more other. There's a lot more involved. Microsoft. Everybody is exploring how to utilize blockchain in their own businesses in a way that is that's going to kind of change and disrupt their industry. And if they don't do that, then there's going to be a company that's going to come out and turn things upside down.
So how long till that's the actual currency? How many years? I'm making you predict just for the help.
It's hard to say, because like I don't foresee Bitcoin becoming like a true currency. I think that something to be an actual currency and being spent requires a transaction to be very fast. If I were to send you Bitcoin right now, it'll take potentially a couple hours for you to get. Huh. Now, that's great if I want to send money to Asia, because that still beats Western Union. It's good for remittance. But if I wanted to buy something at a store, I'm not going to wait around. Long, right? And so that is still like a big factor that's stopping cryptocurrencies to really take full flight in terms of being a currency. So that's when you're seeing all these other coins coming out and popping out that's trying to solve that issue. But that issue is a very complex issue on the technology side to kind of solve. And so Ethereum is trying to solve it. Another coin, Dash Pay, is trying to solve it. And so somebody will solve it, but we don't know who yet. And so they estimate it to be anywhere from 3 to 10 years out.
Do you think people should be investing in it? Like actually buying it? Is that something that people should be doing? Yes,
but I feel that right now it's all-time high. And yesterday, it was about $6,000 per Bitcoin. And I think that anytime that it hits its all-time high, I would wait for it to stabilize out for a little bit, or wait for it to dip and then buy some more. So if you do plan to buy, I always recommend start out small, just to like dip your toes in it and learn about it, because once you start getting into Bitcoin, then you start seeing all these other coins out there, right? And also I always say to have cash on deck, because if the market does collapse or drop a little bit, then that's when you buy more and then let it rise.
Well, I really appreciate all your time. And if anybody has any questions on growth or crypto or your speaking, where can they find you?
You can find me heavily. First, I'll promote my LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile. So it's linkedin.com/in/Justin C. Wu, the letter C. And then everywhere else on the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's Hackpreneur, HACKAPRENEUR. Feel free to connect with me everywhere. I'm definitely reachable, at least in most places. But I'd say LinkedIn and Twitter are kind of my primary platforms, and then Facebook as well.
Well, thank you so much for your time. That was awesome.
No problem. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Influential. If you found value in this week's episode, please rate and subscribe on iTunes. I'd love to know who you find influential. You can let me know on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Brittany Crystal, KRYSTLE, or visit my website, brittanycrystal.com.
Beyond Influential.